Hello, I'm here with BK from Epic Games. BK, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
I want to talk to you about esports. Esports as an entertainment medium is so different. The content is different, and how this content is consumed is very different as well.
Yeah.
What impact has the surge in esports and the interest in esports had on technology and broadcast?
Right. I think, well, just have said it, I think esports is really fun to work with. They don't carry a lot of that legacy that we always find in traditional broadcast. So they've been very unafraid in terms of experimentation, using technology, leveraging new technology. At the same time as they've been kind of growing up very, very quickly, they've been learning a lot or drawing lessons from traditional sports that I think are paying off well. But striking that balance and understanding your audience is essential. Look at the typical esports tournament. We're talking about a 10, 12-hour production. We're talking about millions of viewers in different languages, different continents. It's a really complex thing to do, yet they really mastered it. And I think it's been really inspiring to look at. And I do think a lot of traditional broadcasters are looking at esports saying, that's a good idea. They are taking, visualizations and really, maybe because they are all gamers, so they're all really kind of visually tech savvy, but they're really using that tech to tell stories in a different way.
Yeah, it's interesting because someone who has never experienced esports is going to look at this. He's going to say it's a bunch of people sitting at computers, and he's going to miss the inherent drama.
Yes.
In a game like, let's say, football.
Yes.
That's evident, right? The ball's being kicked from one side. There's movement. There's action. How do we start using tech to bring these narratives inside of esports out to the audience and communicating them better?
Well, I think a lot of things are happening there where visuals play a big role. They do so in traditional sports as well. Like, how do you convey the memorable moments? How do you convey the action? Of course, commentators are important. Esports have been great at building up famous and really kind of world-known athletes that are taking part in creating kind of that narrative, explaining those situations. And they're sometimes hard to explain, right? So I think there's a lot of resemblance over to traditional sports where if you're not familiar with cricket, it can be not so entertaining to watch. Unless you actually have something that explains it a little bit to you and brings that action to you so you understand. And I think we see that same thing happening a lot in the world of esports. And yes, you're right that audiences are consuming that content slightly differently too. A lot of it is in a way second screen. I look at my own children consuming esports, and they're playing at the same time. And then once there's some action happening, their attention draws over to the esports side. So I think that esports strikes that beautiful balance of how do you actually build content that's pretty long lasting, at the same time as you have these memorable moments, these highlights throughout the presentation. So I think there are some really cool examples out there. There are some that are still getting started and figuring out how to shape the format of their tournaments and their esports side, but it's moving really fast, and it's inspiring to look at.
Yeah, I think we're well beyond the point of checking the viability of esports as an entertainment medium. That's done and dusted.
That's done and dusted.
But
so I think we're at the point now where we're kind of looking at, well, what's next, right?
Yes.
So how do you leverage the physical infrastructure? A lot of times you find that they come in and repurpose other arenas and stadiums that are not really equipped well for esports. So they're finding that their needs are different, and having dedicated areas where you can bring in both players and audience and create that kind of atmosphere is really important. So I think we see that globally, that there are esports arenas that are popping up everywhere for the fact that we need to kind of tailor make them a little bit. So it becomes a really great experience, both from a spectator, whether they're sitting at home or they're actually in a stadium.
For a technology specialist that's looking to make the pivot, there might be a lot of new things that you've mentioned. The second screen, the content portal might be Twitch, it might be YouTube, it might be a live stream. The venues might not be tailored towards esports, which is a challenge.
Yes.
What would you recommend they do in order to start upskilling themselves and getting into the loop of things for esports?
It's a great question. I do think that it depends on where you are in your life cycle, or so if you're at the very beginning of it, you might be looking at finding somebody who's got some experience. So there's, esports is not brand new, so it's been around, some years. So there are people out there that really kind of specialize in doing these type of productions, and they're a bit different, right? So they're not your typical broadcast production company, they're esports production companies. So there is definitely talent out there that can help. At the same time, you probably want to upskill your own teams, and this is it's a lot to know, it's a lot to learn. Just, for us, we focus on the Unreal Engine and what we can offer. There's a lot of material out there available. We even have what we do in order to provide knowledge to new users of Unreal Engine is we often create these what we call sample projects. So it's like a fully downloadable free asset that you can download. We did one when we worked with our Rocket League team for our own esports production, and we basically took that very sample that we used for their esports broadcast and released it to everyone. So anybody can go on our marketplace and download the sample, and it can be a great starting point to kind of like just see how things are built up. But that just gives you the ability to understand, what can the tech offer? You're still going to be the one that comes up with your concept. What is your story? How do you then leverage the technology in order to create excitement, engagement, to really kind of both respect the fact that there might be a second screen experience, but at the same time, you want to draw their attention to the highlights and the good moments.
Yeah. I want to conclude this conversation by going back to something that you mentioned right at the start, which was traditional broadcast is picking up things from esports, and they're kind of synthesizing what's happening, and that's leading to another evolution on the traditional broadcast side, which obviously will then feed back into esports at some point in time, and then the loop continues.
Yes.
What impact do you think esports is going to have moving further down the road? Do you think that it's really shifted things one way or the other?
Well, I mean, we can look at it kind of short-term or long-term. I like to kind of take the long-term view of it. The reality is, if you look at the audience of esports, it's the future.
Yes.
So it's, in a way, if we want to know what the future holds, we need to look at that audience. We need to look at that demographic. They're going to be the decision makers of the future. So I think that it's really kind of inspiring to see how unafraid they are at adopting new technology, taking IP video streaming that was a complete natural for them, yet in broadcast it was some hesitation because it wasn't the standard, it wasn't the well-known and trusted format, but esports adopted it very, very organically and very quickly. So I think that we will find that. And this also goes to kind of content usage or content creation. It's like, what is that future type of content that engages the audience? Well, we're going to see that starting to happen on the esports side because their audience is young. They are really tech savvy. They really love, and particularly for esports, they love graphics, of course. They love visualizations. So the more, the better. The more flashy, the better. And obviously it caters itself nicely. When you're doing an esport, you are basically, doing a live production about a game. Yeah. So, and the game is generally made in a game engine. Yeah. So it caters itself really, really nicely also to just the medium itself. So I think we're going to see tremendous experimentation. We're going to see a lot of esports that bleed over into the more interactive world. Where you as a viewer can interact more directly with the medium itself, We're going to see examples when the game itself becomes a part of the esports. All of these things are accessible essentially to esports, and it's not to traditional sports.
BK, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.